Welcome back. If you recall from our last video, we were creating a variety of members that we could use for some sample scheduling. I ended up going with a slightly different direction, with each member having a first name of their level, just for the sake of us seeing how things were being assigned, and then their level as a number spelt out. We will go through and notice that we have now 9 members assigned 1 through 9. Let's go to the next step of creating a meeting. And if you recall, we have a meeting activity set up for a very simple meeting. These are just basic activities. They are not actually associated with a meeting yet. This is just a pool of entries that you can draw upon for the sake of creating your meeting. So let's go in and create a meeting. And this first step, it's going to be a little bit more involved to create a meeting than it will be for most future meetings, because the first time you create a meeting you have to do it from scratch. But for future meetings, because they likely will have a similar structure to the initial meeting you're creating, you can just copy from your most recent meeting. It'll create a new structure, and then you can go ahead and assign all of the various people to the different tasks. So let's start out just by creating a meeting. You'll notice that when I hit the insert button, it says, do you want to insert an empty meeting with no activities or clone a selected meeting's activities? Well, we don't have any meetings yet, so we have no choice but to insert an empty meeting. And let's just hit T for today's date. The theme will be New Beginnings, and we will save that. You'll notice that it automatically copied the location from our club setup, so you don't have to retype that each time. And let's go ahead and add an activity. The first activity will be Sergeant at Arms. It's a regular activity, and all of these will be regular activities in this particular example. And we won't specify anything else further down here for now. We will just go ahead and add each of these items. Chair, guest introductions, table topics evaluator, and you'll notice that as we're going through, it automatically copied everything from that standard activity, and you can override any of this information if you want. You can change the duration, add light information for the timing of the lights. It's completely up to you, but it does default as much as it can. And add the break, and add the speaker, add the evaluator for that speaker, and finally add a general evaluator. So here we have everybody, or all of the activities scheduled for the meeting. You'll notice that it shows how much time is allocated to each one and automatically figures out if you're starting at 7 o'clock, here's when your meeting will end at roughly 8 o'clock. Now, the next thing we want to do is look at how we might assign these particular entries. You'll notice that there are colored cells over here on the right hand side. The reason that some of them are green and some of them are not is simply the ones that are green are the ones that you would want to assign. This one is not green because, if you recall, the guest introductions are done by the Sergeant at Arms. If we look back at our meeting activity catalog, here's our Sergeant at Arms. It's an automatic assignment. And then the guest introductions are copied from the Sergeant at Arms. So that's why it's not prompting us to go ahead and assign somebody there. In fact, if we double clicked on that, you'd notice we don't even have an option to assign anybody because it's always copied from that other entry. The table topics and evaluator for that are set, and of course the break requires no assignment because nobody performs the break. It's a group activity. So you really only need to worry about filling in these general entries. And if we hit auto assign at this point, it's going to ask you, is that okay? And say yes. And if you take a look at the levels of the people assigned, it's given the general evaluator task to the person with the most competence, with level 9, because he's the best fit based upon the history that we have. In this case, we have no history. So it says, well, given that they've never done anything, I will give the general evaluator task to the person with the most skill, because it's the most difficult task in this particular meeting. Next up, you'll notice that the chair, if we took a look at the actual skill level required for the chair, was a 7. So it says, well, we've got a person who's a perfect match, so we'll go ahead and assign that person, given that there is no other history at this point in time. The Sergeant at Arms is a 2, and then of course it copies that automatically down here. And you'll notice that the text for this one that was copied is slightly dimmer than the other ones, just to give you another signal that that is a secondary assignment. The Table Topics Evaluator and Table Topics Masters are assigned, but it left the speaker unassigned. And the reason for that is because, if you recall, when we created this particular task, it was a manual assignment because you don't want to automatically assign your formal speakers. So it left that unspecified. In most situations, we probably would know who the speaker was prior to doing automatic assignment for everybody else, but in this particular case, we didn't bother to do that, so it just left it unassigned. So let's go ahead and assume that this person is going to be doing an icebreaker. So we will set 1 and done. And we now have a fully scheduled meeting.